As a designer, I am always looking for ways to challenge myself. And so in today's video, we're going to see if I can create a logo from a totally randomly selected Google font. And I'm going to take you along with me across the whole design process. And we're going to see if I can create something that's any good or if I'm going to totally crash and burn. Let's get into it. So I'm thinking I'm going to divide this video into three main sections. The first one is going to be choosing the Google font and basically wrapping my head around what I'm going to be designing. Part two is going to be my creative conceptualization process. It's going to include me word brainstorming, coming up with a mood board, looking for inspiration, etc. And then part three is going to be designing the actual logo. So let's jump straight in with choosing a Google font. And I'm just going to do this in a random scroll and see where we end up. Okay, so I have jumped into Google Fonts and this is what I'm going to use to randomly select my font for the logo. And I've done this so that you guys can essentially follow along. So feel free to jump into Google, look for the font that we end up with and give designing the logo a try. So the first thing I'm going to do is I actually want to just minimize the risk of landing up with one of these beautiful sort of like other language fonts. So I'm going to type something into the sort of custom font section that's just going to give me English because it's already detecting the language. And then to actually sort of make choosing the font a little bit easier, I think I'm going to put it into list format, make the fonts a bit bigger so we can see what's going on. And then just for a little added extra challenge, I am going to not work with serif and sans serif fonts and the monospace fonts. I'm going to have a look at all these interesting fonts because I want to see if I can come up with something using one of those. So this is going to be a real challenge, but let's see how it goes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a try in terms of just randomly scrolling up and down a couple of times at different sort of speeds and then seeing where my mouse ends up. Now, of course, I'm going to make sure that I can't actually see what's going on. So I'm going to close my eyes and give a couple of scrolls. I think I'll go 3 down, 2 up, and then maybe 1 more down and see how we go. So I'm going to place my cursor here and off we go. So closing my eyes, I don't know, where should I look? At the sky. Okay, let's just look at the sky. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1. Okay. We have got a font called Yellowtail on our dashboards or on our artboards, on our screens. Okay, so the irony is that I actually don't mind this font and I've used it before previously in a project. So this is quite cool. So this is a retro font. Let's read a little bit about this font. So we've got a couple of different ways to use it. As far as I know, it's just one style, regular 400, and okay, so it doesn't actually give us any extra information about it, but that's fine. Oh, here we go, about and license. Old school flavored flat brush script typeface of medium weight. Its mix of connecting and non-connecting letter forms lend to its unique look and legibility. It nods to classic 1930s type styles like Gillies, Gothic, and Kaufman, yet has the loose visual cadence of sign painter scripts. So I was just going to say that it reminds me of that sign painter style. Okay, great. So we've got this font. I'm going to install it on my computer, open up my word brainstorming app, and we're going to see if I can come up with a brand that matches this font style. I have jumped into Miro, which is a really great brainstorming app if you're interested in doing something like this. You could do it with a pen and paper, of course, but I think just for ease so that you can literally see what I'm typing and coming up with, I'm going to use Miro. So I've just created a new project here and it's just a mind map format, and I've actually taken a screenshot of the font and popped it in here. And now before I try and overthink myself into a complete whole, I'm going to first have a look at the font and come up with some sort of general feelings that I get when I look at this font. Part of customizing typography and creating logos for brands is understanding how certain things convey certain ideas and give us certain feelings about the brand based on the style. So of course I can manipulate this font and do whatever I like with it, which is probably what's going to happen. But I think it's key to note, first of all, that we are trying to first see what kind of a feeling this font evokes, and then I'm going to see if I can connect it to an industry or a type of brand that might match. And that's kind of a bit of a backwards way of doing it, but it's an interesting way to reverse engineer a logo. So the first thing I'm thinking of is that obviously this feels quite retro to me, and usually what I want to do is I'm just going to use this to brainstorm some ideas, and I'm going to think of some feelings and thoughts, and I'm just going to get it all down, and I'll meet you back here when I've got a finished mind map. Okay, so I have gone ahead and done some brainstorming, and I sort of thought of all sorts of things, but I kept coming back to obviously retro and then this concept of a diner. So this font definitely makes me think of food, and it makes me think of those kinds of typical experiences. And then it sort of led me into, well, it's also quite fun and playful. And so I was temporarily inspired by the flow, and actually thought that this part of the F looks a bit like a wave. And so I thought about surf brands. You know, could it be a surfboards or a clothing brand or something like that? I even went so far as to come up with two totally left field ideas. The first one is like a vintage furniture flipper brand. Maybe what it's doing is taking vintage furniture and modernizing it or something like that. Or, I don't know, totally creating furniture from scratch. And then also this sort of sense of nostalgia with the font, but I do think it might just be a little too playful for that. And I was thinking about travel, and then maybe this is some sort of brand that rents out super old school retro cars that have been redone to like events. So maybe this is a brand that ships out or rents those beautiful old vintage cars to events and things like that. So I thought about a brand like that. But I thought, you know what, for the sake of this video, doing something like that might be a little bit tricky because I can't really create any collateral for it. And then I thought, what if I took a spin on this and tried to make this vintage playful fun font into something more premium? So could I turn one of these ideas into something a little bit fancier, and actually see if I can customize the font a bit and see if I can pair it with a color palette and other supporting elements that might be a bit more premium. So we've got that visual contrast going on. And this is something I really like to do, and I think that it's interesting when coming up with stuff like this because you really do get to play. And one of the things I learned early on in my design career is that, you know, you can push contrasting concepts together and you end up with something that really is quite unique and memorable. There's benefit in obviously staying within the realm of what is expected so that people have certain associations with things. But when you get to do a fun project like this and you get to do something a bit out of the ordinary, and obviously it's not for a client, you can really push the envelope. And so I'm considering whether or not I create a luxury ice cream parlor based on this font. So it's like a gourmet, over-the-top ice cream parlor, or perhaps a chocolate brand. So what I'm going to do is see if I can decide which brand I'm going to create, and I'll see you back here for the ideation phase. Okay, I'm back and I've done some major brainstorming, and I've come up with 4 ideas for the name of this luxury ice cream parlor, with a little hint of retro, of course. So we've got a couple of ridiculous names. Okay, the first one is Monday, you know, like a Sunday, but it's a Monday. Okay, because I thought this could be one of those brands where it's like ice cream for any day. Like you don't have to wait to the weekends. Like, you know, any day is a good ice cream day. So Monday. Then we've got Sunday, Monday. Like again, same concept, but it's like what comes after Monday? I mean, what comes after Sunday? It's Monday. So there was just that. And then I thought, you know, we've got 2 which are slightly more on the premium side. Sunday Avenue, and then Sunday Co. or Sunday Company kind of thing. Both of which are not totally original and groundbreaking, but might be quite fun to design with. And I'm thinking I like the idea of either Monday or Sunday Avenue, and I think I might go with Sunday Avenue because when I'm looking at it, it just looks like a nice layout. So it's got a strong sort of balance to it. And I think that we can do something really cool with the S and the A. And I also just like the idea of it talking about Sunday Avenue as though it's like a journey through flavors, and you're going to walk down this cool avenue of ice cream deliciousness. So that's kind of me. I've conceptualized the name. Now what we're going to basically do is do a quick brainstorm on just finalizing sort of what the personality of this brand might be, some of the key things that I'm going to look for when it comes to inspiration. So how am I going to define the brand and what it does? And then what we'll do is we'll jump into Pinterest and start looking for inspiration so that I can create a mood board. Now, today's video, I'm going to just be using Pinterest for looking for inspiration, and maybe I'll jump onto stock photo websites to look for some supporting imagery, of course, but just for today's sake, I'm going to be looking at Pinterest. Now, usually I would recommend that you use multiple places to gather inspiration, because Pinterest can sometimes be quite close-minded and everybody uses Pinterest, and so you can sort of sometimes end up with using concepts that are already out there, and we obviously don't want to copy anybody's work. So, but for the sake of just getting the creative ideas flowing, I'm just going to be using Pinterest, and we'll jump straight into that in a minute. But first, let's define who Sunday Avenue actually is. And one of the quickest ways I'm going to do this is just jumping straight back into my good old Miro board and building from there. So we're going to jump straight back in, and you can see here I use the same space to generate kind of what I'm doing. So we've got luxury retro ice cream parlor here, and I've gone, okay, so it's seen as a luxury dessert. Probably help if I, spelt things right. I'm now questioning my spelling. Somebody tell me which spelling is right. Sorry. My English doesn't work very well when I'm in design mode. Okay, so it's one of those places that's going to be open late. It's kind of seen as a luxury dessert venue. So for example, I picture this in the city and it's along one of those cool restaurant strips, and it's going to stay open late so people can go in for a gourmet ice cream. Maybe there's like some cool wall decor, like a selfie wall or something like that. Already my ideas are flowing. Great for events as well, thinking bridal showers, baby showers, work events, all sorts of things like that, where a sparkly, glitzy, retro ice cream parlor might be fun. And then I'm also thinking that they will more than likely have lots of super gourmet flavors available, and also just thinking, not that I'm going to be able to build this into the design, but just thinking in the background in terms of context, that it would be the kind of place where customers could come and design their own flavor. So maybe it's going to have like a little lab at the back or something like that. Again, journey of flavor. So starting to think about taglines and things like that as well. So here's me brainstorming for the name of the brand, and I'm going to take this a little bit further. And I'm actually going to add on another section here, and I'm going to call this taglines. And I'm just going to add that one that I've just been sort of harping on about, journey of flavor, which is not hideously terrible, but it's also not great. So let's just see if we can come up with something else. I'm also just thinking that it's going to be something along the lines of, going on a journey because of that whole avenue concept. But yeah, so we'll play with journey of flavor for now. And I think that's going to be great. So the next thing that I'm going to do is actually just quickly take a screenshot of Sunday Avenue. I'm going to jump back in here and I'm going to drop it into Miro. Now this is something that's really great with Miro, is that you can just sort of like drop stuff. I've got sticky notes, blah, blah, blah. So, okay, we've got Sunday Avenue here, and this is kind of what we're seeing as it's a luxury venue. So the next thing I want to kind of do is grab a sticky note, and I'm just going to make this nice and big. And what I'm going to do is brainstorm two things. So I just want to go like this, and I want to go up to the top. So you've got a lot of customization here. So what we're going to do is I am going to type in personality, and we're going to have, sophisticated yet fun. We're going to have diverse. Maybe we've got something like, maybe they're a bit tongue-in-cheek. Haha, because it's ice cream. Sorry. And maybe they are sort of quite sassy and playful, because you can have a premium brand who's got a cool language like this, obviously. So they don't want to take themselves too seriously. Maybe we don't take ourselves too seriously, just our ice cream. Okay, so we've got some cool stuff to play with here. And then what I'm going to do is just duplicate this, and I'm going to brainstorm who our audience might be. So these are going to be people who obviously love ice cream. Why is this font so enormous? We can just make this a bit smaller. Oh, not the actual post-it, the font. There we go. So they love ice cream. They are probably on social media, as in who isn't on social media, but still. The next thing is maybe they are sort of slightly older. So 20s to 20s onwards, because I mean, yeah, we're not going to discriminate. And maybe these guys are fun-loving. Cool. So I'm going to take some time, and I'm going to build out what would effectively be a bit of a strategy for this brand. And then we're going to jump into the creative process of looking for inspiration and creating the mood board. I'll see you then. Alrighty, so I'm here now. I've written down like some very high level notes. Obviously, in the full strategy process of designing a brand, it's going to be more than 3 sticky notes. Ideally a whole strategy document, but we've got the basics to work off here. So what we're going to do is focus on an audience that are super passionate about food and eating. They're probably quite creative and expressive, and probably quite entrepreneurial. And usually what I mean by that is that they are sort of out of the box thinkers. Maybe they run their own businesses. Maybe they're in the creative industry. I don't know. But they are probably not going to be the people who enjoy, life at home, because, well, look, it's not like people who enjoy life at home don't enjoy going out, but the whole idea with this is that these are people who are probably quite extroverted and enjoy being out in public spaces and enjoying lots of fun activities and things like that. So, because obviously this is a destination, so this kind of, you need to come to the actual venue. So if you're the type of person who doesn't like leaving the house for your ice cream, then this brand is probably not for you. Okay, so we've got a sophisticated yet fun-loving brand. They're quite tongue-in-cheek, so they don't take themselves too seriously, just their ice cream, which could be like a campaign tagline as well. So it's like, don't take life too seriously, but just ice cream. So things like that. I'm just thinking ahead. Now, I think this is probably part of the fact that I've been doing this for quite a while, but when I'm thinking about brands, I'm always thinking about the application and the extension. So I'm thinking beyond just the logo. In fact, I haven't even thought about the logo up until this point, or the colors or the fonts. I'm thinking about how I'm going to tell the story and how the brand would show up in the real world. And part of that is thinking about things like how they would market themselves and how they would show up on social media, and what this brand is going to be like as a characterized personality within the food industry or within the industry that you're dealing with at the time. So I'm thinking beyond just the basics. But in today's video, obviously, we're just going to be working on the design aspects, but all of those thoughts contribute to how I'm going to design the logo and everything else. So what we're actually going to be aiming to create is, of course, the primary logo, which will probably be type-based because that's the whole point of this video. And then we'll create a secondary logo or a badge where we could maybe play with some visuals or some illustrations or something like that. And then obviously choosing a color palette, supporting fonts for marketing collateral, and then maybe we'll do a little mock-up of an ice cream cup. And maybe we'll think about ways in which we can deliver the brand to the public. So without further ado, I'm going to start my creative inspiration phase where I'm basically going to jump into Pinterest. I'm going to create a board for Sunday Avenue, and I'm going to see if I can pull some references. Now, the key with mood boards is you want to make sure that you're including a little bit of everything. For this brand, because I'm not going to present it to a client, I might not spend too long customizing certain things, but I'm looking for at least some typography inspiration, some packaging inspiration, photography treatment. I'm looking for logo styles. I'm looking for color palettes, everything. And I want to try and condense all of that into 9 mood board squares. And I can use either Adobe Illustrator or InDesign to do the mood board. Today, I'm probably just going to use Adobe Illustrator. But for now, let's go ahead and jump into Pinterest. So when I'm in Pinterest, really what I want to do is remind you guys that the tool is only as good as how rich your knowledge is of how to use it. So with Pinterest, like, there are certain ways to find what you're looking for. And I always find that when I'm coming in to look for inspiration, it helps me move quicker if I know what I'm looking for. So I've already understood that this brand is going to be like retro luxury. So first of all, I want to see what I can find in that direction. And I usually start off with looking for logo styles first, because that's obviously the most important thing here. And then the next thing I'm going to look for is kind of design options that lend themselves to the color palette that I'm thinking of. Now, there is your typical ice cream parlor color palette, the pastels, right? But because we're going to add a luxury spin to this brand, and I want this sort of retro luxury, I'm quite keen to see what pops up when I literally type in retro luxury brand into Pinterest and see what they spit out. So I'm seeing immediately, I'm getting a whole bunch of sunglasses, which is obviously not what I want. So I'm going to refine my search and add logo instead. And now I'm getting more of what I'm looking for. So I think the thing is with Pinterest is you've got to know what words to use. Keywords, it also depends on how people uploading the content have labeled their things. So you just got to keep looking until you find what you want. Now, I'm seeing straight away that I'm seeing a lot of ornate things. I'm seeing a lot of handwriting. I'm not really seeing anything that feels quite right for this brand. However, I am noticing maybe something like this, which we could potentially manipulate the font. So I'm going to save that and just see. Now, this is just a blank profile, so everything I save is going to just pop up here. And I'm just going to leave it like that. Obviously, if you're using your own Pinterest account, what you'd want is a custom board. But just for the sake of this video, I'm just going to save everything in one place. So that's quite retro, that lovely little icon. And I'm actually just going to save that just out of curiosity. So I'm going to take a quick look through here and see if I can see anything else that feels right. I am seeing that sort of retro logos typically have quite a lot of aspects to them. So they're those super detailed, quite complex logos with lots of different elements. That's not really feeling too retro to me. Okay, so I can already see that I'm not quite getting what I want. So maybe if I take out luxury and let's see, okay, we're getting a bit closer. So now it's starting to feel a little bit more on brand or a little closer to what I had in my mind. Now I'm immediately getting inspired by the idea of gold foiling and things like that, because I'm going, okay, so we want luxury, so we want something in there that is a little bit more fancy, but I hate being totally on the nose with things. So I like it, I'll save it, but I probably want to do something else with it because I don't like the idea of making things totally obvious. So I'm just going to have a look through here. I'm going to spend some time doing this, refining my searches and seeing if I can pin a whole bunch of things. And then we're going to come back and audit the mood board or audit the Pinterest board, have a look at everything I've saved to see if we can start pulling out certain ideas. And then we'll go into creating a mood board. So I'll see you then. Alrighty, so we are back. I have pinned a bunch of stuff as well as saved out a couple of stock images that I found on the lovely Pexels website. Now, I could probably go quite insane on this site, but I think I've got enough to work with. Considering we're only going to be creating max like 2 mood boards for this, then I think I've got plenty to go with. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to have a look through the Pinterest board and see kind of if I can pull out 2 directions from this. Now, typically when I'm presenting concepts to clients, I do like to present pretty much only 2. And the reason being is sometimes I find that 3 options can actually give my clients decision overwhelm, and they get super flustered with trying to decide which option is best. Whereas if I give them 2 and they're slightly different and they focus on 2 different things, then it's much easier for the client to anchor in one or the other direction. And usually what will end up happening is there'll be a bit of a blend of the 2, but I don't really mind that. Then I have creative control of doing that, and I still give my clients the sense that they've got collaboration and choice. And I like doing this because it does test a couple of things with the concepts. So what I'm looking for here is 2 distinct creative directions. Now, keeping in mind, of course, that we are going for this luxury retro feel. We've got this font, so I'm particularly looking for some inspiration that includes similar fonts so that I can start looking at a way to tackle this logo that's going to give us that retro feel, and it's going to feel like an ice cream parlor first of all. And then I'm also looking for secondary inspiration for things like color palettes, photography direction, etc. And I'm really trying to see if there's like a couple of different ways to do this. So the first thing I'm going to do is have a look here. And I think there's a couple of things. So there's the typical sort of like full-blown gourmet route that we could take with photos like this and, you know, packaging that's kind of along this line, which I love. So I'm probably going to fully explore that direction, and we'll probably go for the logo style that I'm thinking for this direction is probably a lot like this. And it's probably going to be sort of the retro feel is going to be a bit like this with maybe multiple different fonts. Maybe this gelato one here is a nice kind of look for that. There's also something like this, and maybe with a different color palette, or something like this vintage industrial logo. Like we still got that super sort of authentic vintage feel that we want from that font. But then there is another approach that we could take, which is like this sort of very creamy feel. So it's more this kind of a feel, and it's more like probably a little bit more feminine and playful, with sort of a bit more of a refined, brighter look. And so for that, I'm thinking more this route and this route with something like this. So a little bit more elegant, but to be honest with you, it feels a little bit flat right now, but I'm not sure. I'm also really drawn to this photo where I've got this deep blue, which I thought was really nice. Plus I'm seeing this contrast with the deep green blue, and here we've got this charcoal look. And I'm just thinking it might be quite nice to see something either with like a deep forest green, and then to pair that with pastels as a contrast. It might be quite interesting to look at that. So that's really where my thinking is at. I'm also looking at this, which is also that sort of more cream look and feel. It's the pastels. It's just like that really light, airy, breezy, classic luxury feel, but it also lends itself to that classic luxury ice cream parlor, or just the luxury feel in general, and the ice cream parlor feel with the pastels. So I'm trying to work out where I want the contrast and all of that. So that's going to come together in the mood board phase. Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can pull these images into a folder. And this is my favorite way of doing this. I find it really quick. It doesn't work with every single image. It depends how it's been loaded into Pinterest. So I'm going to try and drag them in and just see where I'm going to go from there. I'm not going to pull every image because I've already decided that there's certain things I like more. And so I'm going to stick with that. So I'm going to just do that quickly, and when I've got all my images, I'll check back here for the mood boarding process. We have two directions to go with. So I have spent some time wrestling with the mood boards, and we've got our two directions for Sunday Avenue. Luxury ice cream parlor. So what we've got is direction one, which is the moody luxury feel, but still that hint of retro. So we're going to see if we're going to go with this direction, which is got a lot of these like super luxurious images, and I thought those would be really great for social media, also really great for campaigns. Thinking as well that you can do art direction like this for wallpaper or whatever. And then obviously I'm looking at the logo and considering that we might need to find ourselves a secondary font or something like that, but we've got ourselves a nice neutral color palette here to work with, and I'll pull that out in a second. And the second direction is also quite fun, and this one is more of, to me at least, I feel like this might be a little bit more along the lines of the actual vintage feel. So we've got the pastels, and we've got the lighter, more fun, classic ice cream feel. And what I would really like to do is, I mean, ideally would like to see both. So let me know in the comments if you want me to give it a go with the other mood board. But I think what we're going to do today is we're going to push ourselves and we're going to try and get that font to look super premium. And we're going to go with direction one. The reason why I'm doing this is because I do really want to challenge myself, and I want to see if I can make that font work for a brand like this. Typically speaking, what you'd want to do is obviously pick a font that gives you the best basics. And I think we're close. I think that our font that we've chosen is quite similar to these two and the Joes over here. So we are going to jump straight into the logo process. We're going to pull out a color palette later on and see if we can work with that. But I think we are going to stick with direction one, and we're going to now create our beautiful, neutral, sassy luxury ice cream parlor, Sunday Avenue, in our beautiful neutrals. So the next step for me is I'm going to jump in and create a new Illustrator artboard. And when I'm designing logos, I don't fuss about the size of my my artboards right now. So what I'm going to do is just give this a name, Sunday Avenue logo. I'm going to design an RGB for now, and that's fine. And I'm going to create this artboard. And now what I'm going to do is my favorite thing, which is actually dealing with a totally white board. So what I'm going to do there is Shift Command H, and this basically gives me a fully white space to work with, because I find sometimes when I'm designing with artboards in the logo process, I get really restricted by that frame and it starts freaking me out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull in my mood board. There's my mood board. And I'm also going to go in here and grab my font, Sunday Avenue. Now, usually what I would do is, obviously, this is a very backwards way of doing logo design. Typically what we would have had is the chosen mood board. I would have then gone ahead and tried to find a custom font that was quite similar and dealt with that. Now we're moving backwards. So my job is to make this lovely font, which is Yellowtail from Google Fonts, by the way, if you want to follow along and give it a try, and see if I can make this font fit this mood board and give it that feel. I do think we're close. I think that we've got, you know, a little bit of work to do in terms of customizing. We're going to need a secondary font. I'm going to pull out a color palette and we're going to go from there. So the first thing I want to do is I'm looking at this going, okay, I like these E's. I think they're quite unique, and I think that they have quite a nice handwriting feel. The one that I'm really looking at is the Scream logo and the Marie's, because I really like the angle that it's at. And typically speaking, with a logo like this, you can't just click and shift it like that because it looks strange. But we're lucky because this font actually doesn't look too bad. And because the crossbar of the A actually sits quite nicely and balanced, it actually looks okay. So we've got something to start off with there. And what I really want to do is see if I can customize the letter forms a bit just to start off with. The first thing I want to do is actually just check if there are any glyphs. And glyphs are basically secondary letter forms and all sorts of interesting things that fonts usually come with to give you more customization abilities and to make your letter forms fit better together. But because this is a very basic Google font, I'm not expecting there being much, and as expected, there isn't really anything. So they haven't given us any alternatives. So we've got to work with what we've got, which is fine. Typically what we could do is go and trace an E from this example, for example, and bring in a new one if we wanted to. And I might do that. I might want to see what it looks like. But right now I kind of like the uniqueness of it. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I've got an outlined version. I've now duplicated it. I'm going to go type, create outlines, and now I can start seeing where the various letter forms join together. So I'm going to go ahead and just join these all so that I can see what I'm doing, unless I want to maybe move them. But I quite like the leading and the spacing, tracking's all good. So I think I'm going to just leave it at that. Okay, so I'm looking at this, and the first thing I'm noticing is that I'm bothered by that little thing over there. So I'll probably go in, direct select, and I want to use my smooth tool just to see if I can work out that a little bit better. Okay, that looks better. Okay, it's a bit straighter. Now I'm having a look at what I've got over here, and the first thing I'm noticing is that I really like the sort of custom way these letter forms flow into each other, and I'm wondering if there's potentially a way of doing that. And also thinking, do I want the logo all in one line, or do I maybe want to try and split them out? Try a slightly different composition, maybe. I'm changing my mind already and I think it looks terrible. Okay. Do I like this? Do I not like this? Do I want to maybe do something like that? You know, another idea is to have Sunday written out and then to have Avenue as the secondary font. So maybe what I should do is see if I can find myself a secondary font for Avenue. Let's see if I can duplicate out some. So we've got like this really strong, then we've got sort of like a slab serif, a sans serif. I think I'm going to go for this look. It's a bit more retro. So let's see. I know that Bebas is quite close. Okay. So let's duplicate out Sunday and let's bring in Avenue. We might need to use the whole word. Not a bad idea. Okay. I wonder how it would look if we did some tracking. Okay, and I wonder if we changed the curve, if that would be better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a curve. Maybe that. So what I'm doing is I want to create a curve for Avenue. Duplicate. But what I'm going to do is I don't want to manipulate this type. I want to actually write it on an actual curve, a bit like they've done here with Creamery. So I'm creating a circle, which is basically what I'm going to type the word out onto. I'm going to hit T for type tool, and I'm going to hold it Alt over the outline, and you'll see your cursor changes, and then basically you can write it out. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to cut it from here, I'm going to paste it in there, and then you can pull on these anchors over here to move the type around and to give you that approach. So I'm going to pull these both down to center, and then I'm going to center the text to make it in the middle. Okay, all right, yeah, this is okay. Maybe a bit smaller. Yeah, all right, we're getting there. I'm going to duplicate that. Maybe we've got to straighten this back out again, except now I'm getting confused. So I'm going to actually make my life a bit easier. And I'm going to just pull in the word straight again. But it's got tracking on it, so now I've got to take that off. All right. So we've definitely got a capital to work with, or an uppercase S to work with, that's for sure. Do I want to do something else with the S? I think I'd like to try. I want to do like a little swoosh on the top of the S to kind of give that like ice cream feel. And maybe what we do is we add like a little splash or something like that, and it looks like dripping ice cream. I don't know if I'm making any sense. I'm going to give this a try. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this with the pencil tool. Ooh, no. Make sure it's the same color. Now I'm just doing it very lightly at first because I just want to first see if I like the idea or the composition first. And then what I'll probably do is turn this into a outline so that I can affect the shape of it, and maybe build it into the... See, because what I'm aiming for is kind of the way the Scream logo works, and just seeing if I can make that fit in. The other thing I could possibly do is I like the way that the letters sort of fit into each other. So I'm thinking about trying something like that, and maybe instead of it being on top of the S, we've got like a little under the A or under the E. Yo, this is not, it's just not doing it for me. What I might look at doing is maybe like a little swoosh on the E. See, I'm constantly referencing back and forwards between my mood board and the artboard itself and just having a look at what I can create. But so far, I'm really enjoying Sunday Avenue, just like this. What I might do is make sure it's the right color, increase the stroke weight just to see. It's feeling a bit like much. I wonder if I did it just like that. Let's go to stroke and change it to round, which is going to just fit better. Pencil tool, which is your which is N, by the way, as a shortcut. Oops. You see, does that look like an E still or not? Probably not, hey? All right, let's try and create an E. Yikes. Okay, so what I'm going to go in here now is just delete that. I want to see how this would fit. I think that looks better. This looks a little bit more retro now that we've got the right E going on. Okay, so we're getting somewhere with that, I think. I'm going to just duplicate this again. We've got a whole bunch of like funny things going on. But let me just see now. Okay, so obviously I would like the A and the E to line up a little bit better. So I'm going to try and see if I can get that to do what I want it to do. I want the A and the E to sort of bleed into each other. Maybe I just adjust this slightly and adjust that. Maybe I get rid of this guy. How am I feeling about this? Okay, we're closer. All right. I still don't know 100% about the S, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and wrestle with this for a bit and see what I can come up with, and I will check back in a bit. Alrighty, here we are with the first sort of look at Sunday Avenue's branding. So I think towards the end there you could see me fiddling with the color palette and seeing if I could get that right. I did play briefly with the blue and ended up not loving the blue as much as I thought I would, but in the end sort of settled on these colors. However, you know, as I come back and have a look at it, I'm definitely thinking that this sort of look is missing something, and I do really like the richness of that blue, but I'm thinking maybe it doesn't need to be a primary brand color. I was also quite stuck with this yellow, or the cream should I say. So if I bring that back in again, you'll see what I mean. There's an interesting sort of look going on there, which I do like. I actually, honestly, I can't make up my mind. I do like the grey, the brown, the black. I think these are all really good colors. But what I might do now is just play with some other options. So really what I'm doing is just color picking from the mood board. And I think that is something that is really useful to just do in terms of getting these colors and tones right. So what I might do is depart a little bit from the deep black and actually look at what maybe like a darker or deep blue might look like. The only thing for me is that I don't want it to end up looking too beach shoppy. So yeah. But other than that, here is the logo, and really the thinking is, of course, now I would ideally like a couple of days to sit and refine this. But the idea here is that we've swooshed out and smoothed out some of the lettering, and I actually went in and just did a custom E because I wasn't loving what the font's E looked like. And then I've just added on these little things in the end, which I'm honestly not 100% sure about. But the idea was to try and capture that little thing that happens at the top of an ice cream, that little point, because that's what the S made me think of. And I thought, let me try and bring that throughout the font. Then we've obviously made the decision to go with the full word Avenue. Now, something like that you'd need to check with your client, obviously, if you could do that. But obviously, because I'm in full control of this brand, I can do what I want, yay. But the idea is we use the full word just to give us a bit more flexibility. Got an established date there to try and give it that sort of like retro old school feel with a little bit more like decadent logo. And then we've got ourselves just quite literally a simple text badge. Now, I'm going to play around a little bit more with some graphics, and I think I'm going to draw out some vector ice creams and see what I can play with on that note. But here is the main brand so far, and I'm quite happy with this. The idea would be to sort of have the badge with just the abbreviated Avenue. I've also had a look at what the logo looks like, just with a bit of texture to it, because I was seeing that some of these sort of retro logos had a bit of like that grain, but I don't know if this is too vintage, and it is still looking quite a lot like a surf shop. So have we hit this on the nail or have we not? I don't know. I do think we need something fun and graphic to add in here. But ideally speaking, this is what we've got. What I am going to do is I'm just going to see if I can't maybe find another color, because I do think that that brown is not quite the right tone. I think we need like maybe a more chocolate brown, although that is not looking great either. So maybe if I come in here and try and mix my own version. Okay, I think that's better. Now we're starting to look like a chocolate brand and we don't look like an ice cream brand. So what are we going to do about this, Rachel? Maybe if we actually keep that other brown? No, that's going to look really weird, isn't it? Maybe if we do a tint. So if we grab our tints over here and we drop this down to like, maybe like a brownie tint and get rid of the cream. Not loving it. Won't be. Yeah, no, definitely not. So let's take it back to what we had, which is sort of the goldy cream and the black, which I think is fine. I think we've got stuff to work with. We've got this gray to work with as well. And so far, so good. All of the colors work really well together. I know it's like a super neutral color palette. It's exactly the same. Delete it. Okay. Right. So I do think that we need some sort of graphics or illustrations here, and we could possibly play more with the layout. But I do think that we've done a really good job of coming up with the brand and making sure that the logo works. Now, I tried a whole bunch of different things, including this one, which I'm not 100% sure about, melted ice cream, but it ended up looking a little horror show to me, which I don't love. And I'm still quite sold on Sunday slanted, but in the end, yeah, we tried a bunch of swooshes, because, you know, these logos all have got this kind of shape going on for them. I think ideally I would have liked to spend some more time trying to see if I can customize it to look a bit more like the Scream Creamery one, where the letter forms, form all nice together. But I'm quite happy with where we're at right now. I think that we have managed to really work with the font. And I think the key here is that we didn't really need to force the font too much. And if the initial essence is there and you've got the sort of feel and it's on brand and you've thought it through really well, then you shouldn't really need to force it. And I think that's the whole point. Like minimal customizations, it's still unique. It's not, you know, it's not going to be something that people can just type out and carry on with. There have been some customizations to it, but in general, like we've managed to conceptualize a whole brand based just on a font. Have we hit the nail on the head with the logo? I don't know. That will be up to you. Rip it apart in the comments. Do your worst. But here we go. So the other thing I'm just thinking about having a look here is that I am noticing that I've actually, and accidentally so, left that sort of beigey tone up there. And I'm wondering if it's not worth actually keeping. I don't know about the sort of like rosy beige with the yellow / cream, but I really do like it with the black. So look, I mean, I'd have to fiddle with this a bit more, but pardon the yawning, everybody. Anybody who knows me knows that as soon as I start talking, I start yawning. So there's that. Okay, we are going to jump into seeing if I can pull together some illustrations for this and some icons and things like that. I'm looking at this going, we've got some vector focuses here. If I come back to my mood board artboard, I'm just having a look and we've got like these vector illustrations, but I think they're going to be too modern for this look. So I'm wondering if I can't steal something from this mood board in terms of this kind of a thing, and actually create some stuff for this brand. Mostly what I'd really like to do is create illustrations of different types of gourmet ice cream. So I want like a super piled ice cream cone, maybe a scooper, maybe one of these. And yeah, so that's kind of what I'm thinking in terms of the vector illustrations. So I'm going to give those a go and let's see what we can come up with. Right, that about wraps it up for Sunday Avenue's logo design using a totally random Google font. I think we did all right, but I'll leave it up to you guys in the comments. Let me know what you think, and also let me know if you want to see more videos like this in the future. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'm really excited to see you in the next one. Thanks so much. Cheers for now.